quick welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you've joined us for the last two sessions, we've been running some really great webinars with our wonderful friends at Ableton. And so tonight, I don't know if you can see everyone on screen or not, but I'm joined by some wonderful colleagues and some folks from Ableton and artists and certified trainers, all kinds of great people to share their expertise tonight. My name's Caroline. As you can see on the screen, I'm from APRA AMCOS, and I'd like to just start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that I'm coming to you from, and that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I would like to pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also extend that acknowledgement to any First Nations people joining us tonight. Welcome, and a big hello to all of our friends over in Aotearoa and anywhere else you may be joining us from around the world. We're so grateful to have you here. So tonight you're in for a great treat. We've got Ed and Willo waiting here patiently to tell you all about what they have to share with you, all of their experiences and expertise. We've had two sessions so far that we've been running with Ableton, and tonight the session is all about creating a remix. So if you've joined us for the previous two sessions, that's great. If this is the first one you're joining in with, that's fine. You don't need to have been along for the last couple of weeks. This is the last session in the series, and what we're going to do tonight, the way that we'll run it is we'll be going until 8 o'clock. We've got Ramsey and Tom in the background from Ableton who will be furiously typing away, answering all of your very difficult questions that everyone seems to be putting in for these guys each week. And Ed and Willo who will be running the session for you. There's also my colleague Glenn Benny in the background. So if you've got anything for us, any APRA AMCOS specific questions, chuck them in there as well. The way that we'll be running the session is at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A facility. Please do use that to put in any questions that you might have for us. And then what we can do is answer directly back to you with those questions. Anything that needs a little bit of conversation or further discussion, at the end of the session, Ed and Willo are going to jump back on and do a Q&A with you guys. So please feel free to pop it all in there. And on that note, we'll also have a break in between as well. So Ed and Willo will be running at those. So I'm going to jump off screen now. Enjoy. And take it away, Ed.
Thanks very much, Caroline. Thank you to everyone for being here today, and thank you to APRA and Ableton for organising this series of workshops. It's a pleasure to be here today and to talk a little bit about creating a remix. My name is Ed Rollo. I'm an artist making and releasing melodic house under the name mredrollo. And I'm also an educator where I help other people do the same. I've been in music for around 20 years or so, playing in bands, DJing, producing and teaching, but it's only this past 4 or 5 years that I've really become a little more serious about making and releasing music. Today, I'm also joined by Liv Willits, aka the talented artist Willo. Willo, how's it going?
Hi, Ed. Thanks for having me, guys. Really excited for this one.
Absolutely. Now, for those who may not be aware, can you tell us a little bit about the Willo project?
Yeah, sure. So I started DJing about 6 or 7 years ago and started making music about 4 years ago. It wasn't until the last couple of years as well, Ed, that I started taking it a little bit more seriously. My first release was in January 2021. Since then, I've released about 12 songs, I think, something like that, and 5 remixes. So love remixes and very excited to be talking about them all today.
Absolutely.
Also, I make like house or like stuff. Sorry.
Very nice. That's good. Big background to what you do, which is awesome. Yeah. So just to sort of reiterate, the session today will be broken up into 2 parts, where we'll start with a pretty informal discussion about various important aspects of remixing, followed by a remix walkthrough of 1 or 2 remixes by Willo. And depending on how time goes, we'll have a short break in between these 2 sessions. We'll round things off with a Q&A at the end, but feel free to drop your questions in as we go. we may answer a few special ones along the way. As we go through the webinar, there will be Tom and Ramsey from Ableton joining us here today. Might help with those, excuse me, technical questions that perhaps we may not be able to answer in the fly. But let's get started. You ready, Willow?
I'm ready. Who else is ready?
Everyone. This is our first time doing a webinar, so it's a little bit different not having the live interaction from people, but it's great to see there's a lot of people on this webinar today.
Yeah, it's awesome to see.
So look, I thought we'd start with some basic definitions just to clarify some terminology, make sure we're all on the same page. I know when I first started getting started with remixing tracks, and well, I wouldn't even call it that to begin with. I was chopping up stuff in Ableton Live and blending things together. I even went as far as looking up remix in the dictionary to see if I'd actually made one, believe it or not. And so we're going to save you all a bunch of headache here and go over some of the essentials, like the terminology of what even is a remix. Willow, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So pretty much a remix is taking a piece of existing audio, so a bit of a song or usually stems, and creating something new and unique from it. It usually changes the music, the feel, or altering the vocals and the arrangement. You can add, subtract, do your own thing. Yeah, basically just a new, fresh interpretation of an existing piece of work.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty broad when it comes to defining what exactly a remix is, but I think that's totally right when you're starting with something existing and then creating something new out of that.
Yeah.
Now, just to look a little bit deeper at that, it comes up in the world of remixing, I suppose. There's a few different terms that I thought would be good to just get a little bit clear on as well. Things like bootlegs, mashups, edits, covers, these all kind of somewhere stem off what remixing is, or sometimes they are the same thing. Maybe we could go through these one by one as well. For instance, a bootleg.
Yeah. It's so funny because I had to actually Google this years ago as well, what a bootleg was.
Not quite a dictionary, but close. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty much a remix that has been made without official permission from the original artist. So you'll see lots of bootlegs on SoundCloud and things like that. A mashup is pretty much blending two songs together. And an edit is a modified version, so you're not changing too much. It's just small things like the arrangement and the track length and structure and things like that. And a cover is original song that you can either mimic or put your own unique take on and add a different instrumental, but you're keeping the same lyrics.
Yeah, so I can see how the lines get quite blurred there, and certainly for things like an edit, and like where do you draw the line as to, is this a remix, is this an edit? And to some degree I feel like it comes down to personal choice and like what you want to brand it as, to be honest.
I agree, and I see a lot of edits on SoundCloud and things like that, and they actually sound like remixes. So remix kind of
they might have just taken an a cappella, created an entire new piece of music around it, and then just called it an edit. And it's like, well, you've done a lot more work than just edited it.
Yeah, and I've noticed that quite a bit lately on SoundCloud. So it's very interesting. But yes,
when it comes to bootlegs as well, and we'll probably dive into this a little bit more when it comes to kind of benefits of remixing. But I feel like this is a really good starting point and something that allowed me to, when I was on my own music making journey, trying to like sharpen my production skills and everything, it was a great way to kind of go, right, this is sort of a non-committal way of putting my mark on a piece of music by going, right, I'm going to start with something existing. There's no way I'm going to get clearance for this, but at least I can kind of apply my skills and what I've learned to something that might be quite familiar to people already and have a little bit more of a chance of getting people's attention.
Yeah, 100%. I do that all the time, and it's just so much fun. Wow.
Actually, I haven't revisited that in a long time, and it actually is kind of a reminder to kind of circle back around and, yeah, maybe should start revisiting the bootleg game again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so knowing all of this and with your own experiences too, can you tell us a little bit about what benefits do artists have to gain from remixing? Like why?
Yeah. For me personally, it's helped me establish bigger fan bases and be discovered by other fan bases as well. So being on the radar with more established artists, so you'll have DJs and stuff like play your remixes and things like that, and yeah, it's just easier to make the music when you already have easier to sorry, what am I trying to say? It's easier when you have a starting point with an original piece of music. I find like it's easier to get inspiration that way, already having something there. Whereas like sometimes it's really hard when you're in Ableton, it's just a blank project and you have to start from scratch. Whereas like starting with a vocal or a melody or a bass line, I feel like the ideas just flow really quickly from there. So, and it's just a lot of fun. I honestly do it all the time. I do about 2-3 remixes, edits a week. Whenever I'm feeling stuck, I'll just pull up my favorite song or get the vocal for it and start building the track from there. And then I end up getting rid of the vocal and then putting in my own vocals or things like that. It just helps me stay creative. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for remixing. It's a good time.
That's a super cool point actually, which I'd not really thought about, but I do this similarly. But you said about taking an a cappella or remixing something, but then actually deleting those aspects of the remix and then just calling it your own because you've just used that to sort of get those inspirational juices flowing kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's really hard to find good vocals these days. And I really do struggle. And I'll just build this whole instrumental track, but it needs a vocal. So I'll put in like an a cappella as just a placeholder until I go away and find something and come up with something different. So that's my little hack.
And these edits or bootlegs, remixes that you're making, are they ending up in your DJ sets? Are they going up on SoundCloud? Are they, no one ever sees the light of day of them? Like what's happening to these finished tracks?
Yeah, good question. A few of them I'll play out in my DJ sets, and a lot of them just live on my hard drive. I just do it just purely for fun and to just keep me creative. And it's really, it's a really good idea because I even did like a Flume remix the other day just for fun. But then I ended up making this really cool pad sound. I was like, oh, great, I'm going to use that for another song. And then, I just keep finding that I do stuff like that. And like when I can't come up with any ideas, I'll start a edit or a remix. And it's just a good idea to keep in Ableton and keep working on my skills. Instead
so
of
good.
Pretty much.
Yeah, but it's taking that that music making experience and broadening it. Rather, it doesn't just have to be, you're right, I have to make a new piece of work every single time I sit down to write music. I could just chop up some tracks. I could make an edit of a track and sort of looking at things a bit more holistically, I suppose, as to just narrowing in on it needs to be original work every time. That's tough. It's a tough slog.
Yeah, it is.
Got to inject those fun moments as often as possible.
Yeah.
Right, excellent. So many different benefits to remixing. What artists have to gain from them too, like exposure. It's just a word that's thrown around a lot, but it really is. Yeah, and you mentioned like developing a fan base too. Now, I was thinking about this earlier before asking this question about. I somewhat believe this is kind of subject to the individual, but I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on whether there's a difference between original work and remix work. Is there a difference? You kind of mentioned it might be a little bit easier, or is it harder? Like, yeah, is there a difference for you?
It's easier to get ideas straight away unless you're inspired by something and you make your own original piece of music. But honestly, they're both like difficult. I know that people have different opinions. Like I've talked to like a producer friend of mine, and he was like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just a remix." But I just because he was like, "Doesn't matter. It's just a remix. Like it's not your song." But I have a different opinion on that. Like if my name is going to be attached to something, it's mine. I'm going to put just as much effort into it as an original. So yeah, they're kind of the same, but I think remixing is a little bit more fun. I guess the pressure's taken off a little bit because it's not an official release, but then it is in the same way. So sorry if that sounded kind of contradicting, but yeah, I wouldn't say there's a massive difference, but yeah, I guess it's harder with remixes too because it's like there's so many different ways you can go. Like, so you have to really figure out what type of vibe. We'll talk about it later, but what type of vibe before going in.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to be really interested to see your examples a bit later and to sort of understand that process a little bit more, which is going to be super cool. So I'm hoping everyone watching at home, or wherever you are in the world, has a solid foundation now as to what a remix actually is and the many forms it can take. Also, some of the benefits with remixing too. We're going to get into some more specific stuff now. We'll talk about some techniques and creative strategies, and yeah, we're going to look at a little bit more, brush on some slightly tougher topics to talk about too at the end. But we're going to do our best at least. Now, helpful workflow techniques. I would be curious to know, we sort of talked about whether this is different from normal original work or remixing work. Do you have any kind of workflow techniques when it comes to remixing, or any advice in that department?
Workflow is pretty much the same the whole time. I just listen to the song, and then I just think where it can go in my head, and I really feel it, and then I just get the a cappella, just the vocal, and usually speed it up, find the BPM, find the key, all that, and just add a kick, make it dancey, and then just leave that space, and then have a little jam out on my push. And depending on the song, if it's already got a really cool chord progression, I'll keep that in there, and there's an example of that later. But yeah, and I just kind of figure out where I'm gonna take the remix pretty much. But I don't have like a template or anything like that. I usually start fresh. It's just kick, vocal, and then sit down with my push or my keyboard and figure out where I want to go. So that would be mine.
It's funny, when I've done 5 or 6 remixes, I suppose, official ones, let's call it, in the last few years, and I find the process quite brutal in that it really takes me a while to find the essence of what I'm really searching for, something that is kind of pays homage to the original perhaps, but also is my own flavor on top. And what am I saying with this? Yeah, in that process for me, it might take a couple of weeks, but I have producer friends, one in particular is based down in Melbourne, and he can just bosh out a remix in an afternoon. And I've always been so fascinated by that, and that he's got a template, just drops the stems in there, goes straight into it. And I'm in admiration because I just physically can't do that. I wanted to show the template for how I would approach a remix, just in case people are kind of curious about that. It's really similar to my own original work, but we'll jump over to Ableton Live just briefly, just to sort of show what that sort of process might look like. And perhaps, Willow, you can answer this one. Can you see my Ableton Live screen?
Sure can. Looks lovely.
Oh, good. Excellent. That's working. Wonders of Zoom. All right. So this is actually my default Ableton Live set just for generally making music. I have just a basic categories here with my drums, top elements, and my kick, which is what I just start with for every project. That's my inspiration, a kick drum. It's pretty good. A good kick is always going to get me in the groove. Then I have leads for my various synths that I have in my studio here, and then just a group for effects. Now, it might look like, I set this up just for this workshop, but I didn't. This truly is how I start my tracks every single time. And then I have a Master Effects bus if I want to process things without actually processing on the master. And the only thing that differs from a remix template to an actual original work template would just be having a place for all the stems. So the stems, I'm not even sure if we define what this is, but they're the individual parts of a piece of music. So we have the vocals and the bass lines and the drum elements and various other musical or melodic elements too. And when you're receiving a remix pack, let's call it that, you don't really know what you're going to get. It's always different. Sometimes you get 25 files, sometimes you get 5. It's always a bit different. Sometimes it includes MIDI. Not sure if you've experienced this too, Willow, but I've often been sent the MIDI parts so that I could recreate some of the chords or the leads with other synths, or sometimes it's just audio. Personally, I prefer just to use audio and then figure out my own parts myself. But this is where I would drop the audio into a stems group here. And a nice little neat trick, I don't actually have any stems. I probably could have prepared something like that earlier, but a nice trick in Ableton Live is to hold down Command as you drop in several files at once. And rather than the files all stacking on the one track, they'll be split up amongst the tracks that we have here, stacked on top of each other, which is quite nice. You might be given the BPM, which is great. So we can adjust the BPM up on the left-hand side here, depending on how fast or slow the remix is. Might be good to start with the original tempo, and then you can take it in any way you like. And then various things like working out the key too. The key thing here with the workflow for me personally is that the stems here, the stem group is active, but then all of the channels are actually turned off, so that when I'm working on my part of the remix, the stems aren't interfering with that, but I can go through solo various elements here and hear them and then chop out bits and pieces or whatever I want to use. But more than anything, that these stem files will probably sit over here on the left-hand side, and my remix will actually be all written here on the right-hand side. But yeah, that's as far as it really goes for a remix template, so to speak, on my side. I'm not sure if you can relate to any of that, Willow.
No, I can't. I wish I could.
Okay.
I mean, I try and be organized, but yeah, sometimes it freaks me out.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
too organized.
Don't put me in a box.
But yeah, I know. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. It helps you get into the flow as well. And I admire people that have beautiful templates set up. Would love to get into it one day. I do have like a little one set up, but I end up just changing most of it anyway. But yeah, that's right. Everyone has different ways of doing stuff. So that's
absolutely. Yeah, I thought it might be nice to also brush on some important aspects when it comes to workflows, developing good warping skills. I saw just in the Q&A earlier, someone was mentioned warping, and I think the question's already been answered. But yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to vocals, I'd be curious to see in your examples later how you approach that. Specifically things like what algorithm you would have used for the vocals, working out the timing for vocals, things like working out the pitch or the key is also quite challenging too. But specifically on warping, the various algorithms that we have for warping audio, which is Live's time stretching abilities, is going to have a big difference on how that audio actually performs, especially when we start changing the BPM, perhaps shifting the key. This can make a big difference. Yeah, but we'll probably get into those examples later, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure.
Beautiful. And one more thing I wanted to mention just on this as well is actually working within a deadline. I thought this was an interesting one to bring up, in that when we're just here making music for ourselves, we got an open-ended kind of timeline here. But when it comes to remixing, the label may want it, or whoever you're remixing, whatever artist is releasing it by a certain date for a certain particular release. How does that go for you, like being confined to a deadline?
Oh yeah, you just reminded me. Okay, this is the difficult part about remixing, guys. Like my most recent remix, I had a week to deliver it, and I found out on a Friday before the weekend, and I didn't end up getting the stems till Monday. But I had already started the track because I just got the a cappella vocal online, so I already started it. But yeah, I had a week to complete this remix. So I don't know, it depends if you work well under pressure. I always freak out, but I find that it's actually really good to have a deadline sometimes, because you have to really commit to ideas. You can spend up to like years on a track and it will never be done, whereas it kind of just pushes you to just get the ideas out and release it. So
commit to something.
But yeah, but can be a bit stressful, but if you're inspired by the track, then it's all good.
I've been very fascinated about the sort of creative process, I suppose, and something I've been trying to learn more and more about over the years, and something that I'm probably going to recite this wrong, but when it comes to the creative process and what there's a really good book by John Cleese. It's just called Creativity, and it's a very tiny little book. It's like one of those, do you remember those Mr. Men books or something? Or they're like little kids books and they're only about this big. It's kind of like that. Only like 10 pages long or something, but he talks about the creative process and creative people, I suppose, even though I would argue that everyone is creative, but what separates someone who would be seen as like highly creative versus someone who would be considered not so creative. There was only a couple of differences between this type of person, and it was came down to a kind of a workflow or a mindset of allowing yourself as much time as possible to get that creative task done, in that the more time you were able to sort of resonate on the problem, so to speak, the more creative the outcome would be, because maybe a new idea will come, or a new way of thinking, or potentially something will, you know, transform that initial basic idea into something which is really quite great. So not necessarily making decisions and firing out as quickly as possible, but like waiting as long as you possibly can to make that decision. I think that's quite a cool concept. And so like working to a deadline is actually really quite helpful for us, because we will drag it on as long as we possibly can. It's because a new idea might come along, right? Yeah, I hope I'm explaining myself well, but I think that deadline is such a cool thing. But I've always found that it's like the you know, the 11th hour that I'm sending off that remix to the label, because I'm like, it's due tomorrow, and here you go.
It's pretty terrifying, not gonna lie.
Yeah, because once you also say yes, you're like, all right, I've got to do this now.
Yeah.
So look, I thought we'd take a look at maybe sort of, speaking of creativity, the creative aspects of writing a remix. I think it's an interesting one about like bringing something new or unique to an existing piece of work, right? Like, you know, we've already got a great piece of music. You've been asked to remix it, or you're attempting to remix it. What are some potential approaches that perhaps you've taken to explore bringing something unique or interesting to something existing?
I think incorporating the push has been really helpful to me. I play a little bit of keys, but not much. And just finding the key of the track and then jamming along has been really helpful. And then taking the original instrumental away from it, like that's what you'll see later on with like a few of the remixes I did. So the push has been really, really helpful. So I would say that would be like my main go-to when remixing.
Yeah, nice. And for those who may not be aware as well, the Ableton Push is Ableton's hardware instrument, which is it's a MIDI controller, but really it's designed as an instrument to kind of enhance your experience of using live. And you know, especially with the release of the Push 3 now too, and the kind of extended capabilities that we have of it too, being sort of separate from our studios if we want to as well. It's a nice way to kind of spark that creativity. Yeah, when we're not sort of plugged in constantly. Standalone features of Push 3. Very fortunate to own one myself. It's sitting right here in front of me. Oh. So it's hard not to mention that. That's fantastic. Which you've got a Push 2, I imagine, or Push 3?
I've got a Push 2. I've had a play on the Push 3. Absolutely love it. So we'll be purchasing one in the near future. I'd love to be making tunes from my couch with no laptop one day. It's
the dream, right? I mean, you see the photos and you're like, that actually looks quite nice.
It's just so fun with just putting a vocal on there and chopping it up and having a little play and going into simpler, dragging the vocal into simpler, and slicing bits of the vocal and having bits of the vocal on each pads and just playing along to the song. Really, really helps you spark some ideas. So it's a great piece of equipment.
Yeah, I found that I've always, sort of in the process of remixing something, if I'm using a vocal as my sort of starting point, that those melodic ideas is sort of the foundation, is where I'm starting to sort of see if I've got something. And I often try to kind of bend, I wrote this down as a little point, but I try and bend the melodic rules, if it makes sense, in that you might have a very like uplifting sounding vocal, which I'll try and turn and make it dark, or maybe the opposite way around, where you've got something which is quite dark sounding, which you can turn around and make it sound quite uplifting. Which is just a personal preference more than anything, to sort of separate it from the original and take people in a new direction, which can be quite challenging at times, because you may be somewhat constricted to the melodic elements of a remix. So that can be a challenge, but something that I like to challenge myself with.
That's awesome.
All right. So a few creative ideas there, or ways of looking at things. And I think just one more aspect on this too, which I think is kind of goes without saying, but the fact that it's you remixing this track and it's not the original artist is already going to bring something unique to the table, and is something that just can never be replaced. I love this aspect in all aspects of making music, in that there's always this sort of constant, potentially in some circles, this constant fight to compare yourself to others, or strive for a certain sound, or to reach a certain level of production skills, or it doesn't sound like this person. And I was just doing this recently the other day, and trying to get some feedback from some producers who are a little bit further down the path than me. And it just sort of was a humbling experience to sort of revisit that and kind of go, well, the fact that it's me making the music is unique enough as it is. I'm going to bring my own spin to the table. And I think that that's one of the kind of key messages when it comes to remixing for me.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So maybe worthwhile looking at a few pain points here. I think it kind of goes without saying that making music is pretty hard, even at the best of times. And sometimes we can run into trouble, even when we have a head start, working with some stems and remixing. What are some common pain points that you've faced when approaching a remix?
Yeah, it goes back to kind of what you were just saying as well. Having a little bit of like imposter syndrome and not having the confidence, and comparing my remix to the original has been like really tricky. And then you have to kind of put yourself and rein it in and be like, okay, the whole point of a remix is for it to sound different, and you can't compare them. But I always have that issue with remixing. Yeah, Golden Features, I remixed a Golden Features song at the end of last year, and he sent through the track, and I was like, oh my gosh, this track is so good, like what can I bring to the table here? But then you just go inwards, and you think about adding your own spin. And I guess yes, so that would be the hardest thing, is like comparing your remix to the original, but also just like creatively not feeling it as well. I have to be like really inspired. I have to really like the track to remix it, and also just knowing when to just be honest with yourself and to the label and whoever, and be like, oh, there's actually nothing I can bring to this remix. And I think that's like perfectly okay to do. And yeah, I guess also having it sound too much like the original, or having it sound too different from the original. I think I'm good about it's so good finding the balance there with that as well. But yeah, those would be kind of my pain points.
I remember, yeah, I can relate to all of that, by the way. I remember there was a remix of Dead Mouse by the artist Stimming, and I think it was Raise Your Weapon was the original track by Dead Mouse, and the Stimming remix of that is just so far out there, and it's just like it was so surprising that there was so much creative freedom there. Like Stimming obviously went into this project and just went, I'm just going to create whatever I want. And it was a kind of an eye-opening listen, I suppose, to know that you really kind of have the freedom to do whatever you want, and to take it in any direction. But yeah, that's a blessing and a curse at the same time. How much do you want to make it familiar for the audience, or how much do you just want to kind of own this thing and just kind of not worry if anyone even recognizes the track in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and also creatively not feeling it. I think that, and you brushed on it just briefly about not really being into it, or not even being into the original. This is a trap that I've fallen into as well, where I didn't have much experience remixing, so I just said yes to everything. I just said, yeah, sure, I'll remix your track, whatever, let's go for it. You know, I need some experience under my belt, and I definitely got a few scars on my back for that too, because there was a point there where I wasn't even sure what I was remixing. Like I couldn't identify anything in the track that needed remixing or that I could like hone into, and that's a tough one. Like if you're not dealing with vocals, for one, you know, you can take that off the table, and you're just remixing an instrumental, then like you've got to have a really powerful lead or something tangible to sort of lock into, to go, well, this is what I'm going to remix. Otherwise, it's just another original track, which is somewhat challenging. So yeah, definitely some hurdles I've come into. Be into the original. That's my advice for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Funny we even have to mention that, but yeah. It's just lessons learned, tough lessons. All right. So, I mean, this is a bit of a curveball question, and, you know, I sort of with the remixing world, we've sort of danced around these topics already, but, you know, are there any kind of unwritten rules when it comes to remixing?
Yeah. I guess like yes and no. Like it really depends on the track. Like for example, like the recent song that I'm going to be breaking down, it's pretty much just like it's a very vocal heavy vocal driven song. So the unwritten rule there for me, like I've got to use the vocals. So like I don't, like, you know, what am I really remixing? So yeah, I guess like an element of like staying like true to the original, and like having respect for those vocalists, because the vocals are you know, the main part of the song, like having them in there and making them recognizable. So that's what I would say is an unwritten rule for me with remixing.
Yeah, it's tough with the whole like artist to artist relationship, I think, and there's a few things we sort of talked about, like, you know, you heard the original you were talking about earlier, and then you're like, this is just so good, you know, how am I going to sort of match this? I've always sort of maybe somewhat selfishly felt like I needed to one up the original or something with my remix, like it needed to be better or something, and which I don't think is the case at all. And I, you know, check my ego at the door kind of thing, and it's just about creating a good piece of music and something that can hopefully support the release that comes out. For instance, if there's a single coming out with a couple of remixes on it, they're going to suit different people's vibes, and that's totally cool. It's not necessarily about like creating a better track than the original, which could be the mindset of people.
Yeah, they usually just want a different vibe from the original. That's the whole point of the remixes. Going out, getting a different take, so it resonates with like a different fan base. So absolutely. Yeah, I guess that's the main point. But yeah, I get what you mean about like, oh, how can I take this to the next level? And not a bad thing that you want it to kind of like match the original.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally get what you mean there.
Yeah, it could potentially, destroy some relationships there, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
what have you done, man?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it was another thing I was thinking about was like when it comes to stems and like what to use. Like, is there? I've always sort of felt like it's open. You can use as much as you like or as little as you like. When it comes to stems, there's not really a rule there, so to speak. Have you used? Do you try and use all the material, or do you like just hone in on one thing?
Yeah, so both the example remixes that I've got lined up. So the first one, which is the Benny and the Gus Dapperton remix, I've just used the vocal and the chord progression. Whereas the other remix, the Tabasco remix, that was actually a spec remix, by the way. So they didn't ask me to remix it. I pretty much sent it to them and they really liked it. And then it came out that way. So add that there. Well, we're on topic. But yeah, so for the Tabasco remix, I ended up using like their clap, their pads, like a few of their pads, the vocal, things like that. So yeah, it really depends. But yeah, I must say it's quite easy just dragging it in and then
It's really
just come out with
interesting
melody.
that you talk about using claps and hats, because I'm pretty sure in every remix pack I've been sent from the label, drums are never included, which I always find quite fascinating, in that what are we, just remixing melodic ideas? I mean, I feel like drums are pretty fundamental to a piece of music, and that there are drum elements unique to certain tracks that might be nice to recycle in a remix. Have you found this as well? That drums are generally not included?
Yep, I think that's why I used them this time. I was like, oh, I'll just use that clap, and I'm pretty much going to use something similar anyway, like a 909 hat or whatever. But I found with the Golden Features remix, when they only sent me like 4 stems, so we pretty much went to them and was like, can we have a little bit more here, because I really wanted like I wanted this like particular lead. But it had all these like bass sounds, and I was like, oh dear. So we just went back and they just like sent it through to us.
That's cool.
But there's no harm in asking, I guess. But yeah, it's usually you don't get much. But in this case, I got all the drums and all the parts, which was awesome.
That's excellent. It's nice to have that open dialogue, that you have the freedom to do that. Say, hey, I want to use this. Can you send it to me?
Yeah.
I've had many times where I've not even made contact with the artist before. It's just the label. And so the artist is unknown to me, and they just send me a track and say, hey, do you want to remix this? I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Who's this artist? And like, it's a so strange process. It's just a rabbit hole that you can easily fall down. I've sort of learned my lessons and a lot more selective these days.
Yeah.
All right. So how are we going for time? Yeah, we've got about, say, only about another 10 minutes or so until we probably should take a break. We'll take a 5-minute break, but a couple more things I thought we should cover. I think a big question that might be on people's mind at the moment, if they're just looking to approach a remix, or they want to get into it, they're fascinated by this topic, they've joined this webinar, how would one go about getting remix opportunities, like beyond making a bootleg in your bedroom kind of thing?
Like putting yourself out there. I post a lot of stories on Instagram of me remixing tracks and stuff, so it's kind of like, so people know that I'm very into doing that, so people have come to me that way, just on Instagram, and putting myself out there. The other thing is remixing a track, and I sent it to my label, and then my label reached out to the artist, and that's how I got the Tabasco remix. So if you really want something, like, you just got to go and get it, and there's no harm in asking. And yeah, so yeah, and yeah, just reaching out to your friends around you, and yeah, if you just put it out there to people that you're keen on remixing something, something will definitely pop up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I mean, when I was starting, it was I was creating bootlegs, which, as we talked about before, is a kind of unofficial version of a remix, or yeah, hasn't been signed off by anyone, but you're creating it anyway and probably just uploading it for free somewhere. And then there's the whole aspect of, I was reaching out to artist friends and, you know, other musicians and other producers and asking them, hey, can I remix this track? I really love it. I did that with some friends early on. But then as I was developing my own releases and actually getting my music out there, working with labels, then the offers started coming in. And I remember that was a very pivotal moment, I suppose, when the tables had turned and people were asking me, hey, can you remix this track? Because we love what you do. And that was, yeah, super cool to know that it's much nicer to be asked than to ask, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. But it's also nice, I guess, as the artist, like if somebody came to me and was like, I really want to remix your track, which has happened, which has been crazy. But yeah, it's really quite lovely, and you want to go with somebody who is passionate about the track.
That's a good point, actually. Being asked someone to remix your own original work too is quite cool too. Yeah,
sure.
Really nice. Yeah, I mean, this is a nice little segue, actually, because we've been talking about bootlegs and, you know, getting out there and getting remix opportunities, and this is a kind of good, like, sort of segue into some success stories, which we were talking a little bit about on email. I know you had a few success stories you wanted to share. Please share them with us.
Yeah. So I think, like, the biggest example in my world would be Lude's remix of Down Under.
Of course. Yeah.
So yeah, we actually share the same manager, and just seeing his success over the past few years from this song has been crazy, and just the opportunities from him for him. Yeah, and it just started off by putting himself out there, making the remix, putting it on TikTok, and it went viral. And then I think Sweat It Out approached him, and they made it an official release with Colin Hayes, and yeah, it's doing wonders. It's 200 million streams or something like that, or maybe less. Anyway, it's in the millions. It's huge. But so yeah, that will be a big remix for me off the top of my head. And then another one that I have always loved, is Flume's remix of You and Me, the Disclosure song. I actually heard it the other night when I was watching the soccer came up, and I was like, wow, that song's still being played. And it's amazing. It's definitely like really, really, really taken off. So yeah, so I think it's pretty cool. And I think sometimes the remixes can do better than the original, not that that matters, but I think it's cool that it has another lease on life, and it's been interpreted differently. So yeah,
that I got to see the Lude, is that how you say his name? He spoke at the EMC, is it, Electronic Music Conference, which was at the Powerhouse, and he was talking about that release as well. And I actually wasn't familiar with it, believe it or not, but I'm not really into drum and bass, so I guess that's kind of why. But I think, yeah, it kind of went viral twice or something, like when it was a TikTok thing, and then when they made it official, it kind of went viral again, which just sort of just shows how much weight something like that can hold. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was right. 250 million streams.
Oh man, that's amazing.
And now he's done a song with Moby as well, which is crazy. And he's remixed like Big City Life, and he's got all these official
Mm.
remixes now. So it's really, really taken off for him.
I have noticed a few other Australian classic songs being remixed, actually, which is interesting to see people trying to jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention an artist, Hellsloot, who I only became aware of because of a remix. Was actually started as a bootleg of Bob Mose's track called "The Blame." So the story goes, which I just found out through his Instagram, that he made a bootleg of this Bob Mose's track because he really loved it, but he wanted to play it in his DJ sets. And so put together this bootleg of The Blame. And before you know it, Bob Moses has gotten word of it and heard it, and then made it an official remix, just because they loved it so much. And so I think that's a pretty powerful example, I suppose, of just doing something for personal preference. And like you touched on it before about you just remix for the fun of it. Like it's just fun to play around with other people's music and see what comes out, potentially use it in your DJ sets or performing or whatever you like. And yeah, you can sometimes really move mountains just by having some fun with things like that.
Yeah.
Now look, we are running a bit of press for time, but I suppose it would be nice to kind of close on a little part of the sort of dare I say, the legal aspect of things, copyright. I just from our previous discussions, and I don't want to speak for you, but I believe that we're probably not very qualified to talk about this stuff in much detail or at all, but I think it's worth mentioning it to some degree. I know that you had a lot to say on this topic because just over email you had a whole bunch of different points when it comes to SoundCloud and sharing music and things. Is there anything that maybe we could talk about, this sort of the legal side of things, without getting into hot water here?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. But yeah, I think if it's not monetizing, so if a track isn't making money, it's okay to be released on SoundCloud and things like that. And yeah, so if you call it a cover or an edit and you're not making money off it, then you should be like in the clear there.
Yeah, it's like disclosure, isn't it? It's like I think that's a really important thing, is to kind of say, hey, I'm not trying to take credit for this. This is clearly a cover or an edit or a bootleg. You use the terminology. Don't sort of go, hey, here's my new Katy Perry remix kind of thing. It's like, what did you get from? It's a nice flex, but yeah, it's also nice to just kind of acknowledge that, yeah, this is not necessarily an official remix.
Yeah, and if you did want to clear the sample, you'd need to talk to the label and the original copyright owner, which can be quite hard to find and quite hard to do. It can take months. So yeah, but yeah, I would say that's all I have to really talk about on that one. It's a bit of a Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one. Even I have one of my songs just on private, just with a free download link, one of my own songs, just to send to people to download and stuff. And SoundCloud took it off because of they picked up the copyright on my original song, which is so funny. So I got copyrighted for my own song. My own song got
happens all the time. Yeah.
So I guess that's good in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to upload one of my original tracks to SoundCloud, but it was like, no, you can't. Like, oh, okay, sure. My SoundCloud is dismal because it's all owned by the labels, and I can't upload it myself. So I just have to reshare stuff, which is frustrating. But yeah, I mean, the bootleg game is wide and strong, and one of the names that springs to mind is an artist called Younger. Youngr, who has really made a name for himself from making bootlegs. And one of the big one that went viral was his Sweet Disposition bootleg by the Temper Trap. And he's playing it live upstairs. He's using Ableton Live, which is awesome. He's launching clips, live looping, drumming and guitaring and singing. He's doing everything. And that sort of video went round and kind of broke the internet for a few days, but also got him a huge amount of recognition for what he can do. And he's absolutely on fire at the moment. He's got 500,000 followers on Facebook, I think, where he's just making bootleg after bootleg after bootleg after bootleg, just in his studio by himself. However, he's a multi-talented instrumentalist where he can sing, play, live loop, record, write, dance. He's a triple threat. He's a quadruple threat. But this is it's live and strong, and shouldn't deter people from kind of giving it a go and putting things out on social media, as long as they're kind of not trying to make them official.
Yeah.
All right. We've just clocked an hour. I think it'd be good to take a 5-minute break here. And then we'll come back. Let's say it's just gone 6:35 here. Let's maybe come back at 6:40, and we'll dive into some remixes from Willo. So see you in 5.
Awesome. See you soon, guys. Thank you.
Perfect.
Everyone, we're back. And I've got a jacket on now because I'm quite cold. It just got really chilly.
I have a heater next to me here, but I've got it switched off because it's quite loud.
Yeah, I'll need one of those. Yeah, it's just really started to cool down the last couple of days. But yeah, really excited to break down one of my remixes. So this came out a few months ago. This is the remix that I only had a week to produce. So it was it was quite stressful, but I'm really stoked with how it came out, and even just having the opportunity in the first place. The remix is called Don't Let Me Down by Gus Dapperton and Benny. And yeah, so I'm going to share my screen and just start diving into the remix, and maybe we'll have a little listen to the original as well before we dive in. So I'm just going to share. All right. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead. Oh, how do I make this? There we go. I'm going to go ahead and play a bit of the original. Let me know if that's too loud as well, Ed.
That sounds pretty good.
I'm not too sure.
That's perfect.
Okay, I might skip it a little bit. It's a fairly chill track. Like I said, very vocally driven. Not much happening production wise, just simple bass line with a few drums and pads. So yeah, a lovely piece of music to work with there. Instantly, I was drawn to the vocals, particularly Benny's. I'm a massive Benny fan, so to even remix this was just awesome. So yeah, my plan going into the remix was isolating those vocals and basically speeding everything up and making a club version. I found that when I listened to Benny's remix, Benny's vocals on their own, they were quite moody. Like she's quite, like it kind of sounded a bit clubby to me. So it really inspired this clubbier remix. Oh, actually, I think I should probably play mine first, right?
Yeah, and we can kind of break it down from there.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Sorry, I'm always a bit all over the shop with this stuff, like showing projects and that. So just
No, it's fine.
rein me in.
I've got loads of questions for you, so that's not a problem.
Okay, awesome. So we'll just go through my remix now.
I let myself slip away. I fall into your arms again. We're wrapped in your warm embrace. Stay this way for me. Kind of funny how you thought I'd wait. Even tell me that I've changed. I don't wanna make it worse. There's nothing I can say. If you took a walk in my shoes, you know why I don't wanna be with you. And now you're asking if I'll take you back. But boy, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Don't let me down, don't let me down again.
Okay, we'll skip it a little bit.
So good.
Oh, I get really stressed like listening to my music in full. I'm just like, okay, let's just skip to this part now.
Even going through Zoom, it sounds amazing.
Oh really? Oh,
Yeah, your drums are
God.
just
And yeah, so and then this is just like the final like drop.
Don't let me.
Okay, beautiful. I'm just nervously watching my CPU there.
I can imagine people just losing their minds at that moment there. It's really epic.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'd love to hear the
Thank you.
breakdown leading into that too, because it looks like there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Classic, you know, how you
bit
have
of
the
feedback
echo.
there.
Yeah, feedback. Yeah, that's it. All right. So yeah, should we just dive in here?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could start with, I mean, what we kind of would like to sort of cover what we've already talked about, but then applying that to your actual remix in a way. So we talk about your kind of workflow, the creative process, whether you
Yeah.
sort of crossed any hurdles along the way. Yeah, some of the do's and don'ts, maybe some of the what you actually took from the original stems, like that whole process. Yeah, tell the story.
Okay. Yeah, so it was actually really crazy because I was listening to the song the night before I got asked. So I was just in bed and I was just like going through my like release radar, and I was working on this other like random edit of like a James Blake song just for fun. And I was thinking, I was like, damn, it would be so cool to like work with like really nice vocals, really nice vocal steps. And the next day, I got a call from my management saying Gus's team has hit us up and asked if you want to remix this track. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, I actually listened to that last night. So it was really crazy. So like going in
Very
the remixing,
serendipitous, I suppose.
yeah. So like going into the song, like I already just had this positivity and I was just really into the track, really into the artist already, and just felt like it was just a massive privilege to be even doing the remix in the first place. So good energy going in, and I found with the song that it was pretty much just the vocal driving the song. There wasn't much like interesting production, but there didn't need to be because it was just the vocal, right? So I was like, okay, cool, I can do something cool here with the production, speed it up heaps, make it clubby, and also just give it that like kind of Willo feel. So it's kind of like euphoric, housey, kind of like emotional music. That's what I'm sort of like trying to go for. So just going into it, I was thinking, okay, how can I like heighten this track? Like what vibe do I want to go for? The trickiest part of this track was figuring out like who's going to be like listening to it, like where is this remix going to sit. I did like maybe 4 versions of it. It was really clubby to begin with, and
what do you sort of define as a clubby track?
So it was no vocals at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay.
It was just like I'll show you shortly, but it was
dark
like,
synth stabs and
this like bass line and these drums, and it was just really like gritty. And then I brought in like Benny's vocal, but I went back and I ended up sticking with the structure that they already had, the songwriting structure, just like the verse, pre-chorus, verse 2, all that. So I ended up just using that. I didn't change the chord progression, I don't think, because I really liked it. And
you've given it that sort of like a sort of melodic spin to it to give that sort of kind of real drive to it. Like even though you may be following the same chord progression, the idea is totally different and unique, which is awesome.
Oh, thank you. I kind of just wanted to, I guess the goal for me and my music is like you want to be able to, and I guess most people's music, you want to be able to like play it in the club and you want it to like hit and people feel it, but then you also want people to like listen to it on the drive home and stream it and things like that. So I kind of had to find that nice balance, and to do that I was like, okay, I'm going to make the song 3 minutes 30. It's going to go straight away into vocals.
So cool to hear you say that about actually thinking about the end point before you even started. And I think that's a massive advantage for just writing any piece of music to begin with, is to sort of think about where do you want this to end up? Is it going to end up in a club? Is it going to end up on a Spotify playlist? Is it going to be, played for an Uber driver when he's driving around the town? Like what's the end game for this track or this remix? Like that's fantastic. Cool to hear you say that.
I must say, I think that's the hardest part of remixing and just music in general. As soon as you just know where it's going to sit and what you want to achieve, it'll just flows from there. And as soon as I realized that with this track, it was done. But at the beginning it was like, how do I do
love it. at the start, it sounds very stripped back and like you've just got driving drums in there, the main groovy melody line and your vocals. Perhaps we could sort of see what's going on there, like what you did to accompany those vocals.
Okay, let's go. All right. Maybe I'll make this. Should I make this a little bit? Is that a bit easier for everyone?
Yeah, we could probably do away with the browser as well. There's a nice little shortcut, Command Option B. Try that one. Or Control, because you're on a PC, right?
Oh, I'm a Mac. I'm a
Oh,
Mac.
you're on a Mac. Sorry, I got that wrong. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll dive in. I'll just move this. Okay. All right. So this is what I originally had. I just had a kick. Okay, it doesn't sound great on its own, but I mean, like, not too bad. It's had a lovely little mix as well after this session. So yeah, I pretty much had this kick and this bass line.
Slip away, I fall into your arms again.
See what I mean about her vocal sounding really moody and kind of like clubby and nice? I was like, oh, I really like that, like starting off.
I let myself slip away.
And just creating a groove here. So I've just got this bass line, and honestly, it doesn't sound great, but I think I made it on Wavetable, and I just transposed it down quite a bit, and it's kind of sounds gritty.
It almost sounds like another kick drum, just
yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And but it added like this really interesting groove. And that inspired that main lead that you hear. But I'll go through it here. So yeah, pretty much put the vocal straight in and just punched in. What else is it? So yeah, as you can see, I would usually have Complex Pro, but as you can see, the BPM there, 117. So that's all you need to do. Drag it in, change the BPM. So hit warp, and then now it's in time.
Did you find everything just snapped in nicely when you initially dropped the project in, your stems in?
Yeah, it did, which was really nice, because usually that's not the case.
Yeah, depending if sometimes you'll get stems of all different length, which I find really frustrating, where they'll just like, oh, the vocal only happens or starts, 2/3 of the way through the project, so I'll just highlight that section and export a stem. Be like, it's really nice to have full length stems with a bunch of silence, so you know where the start and end points are.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I went back to them and said, hey, can I have all the vocals? Because I think they only sent me, they sent me Gus and Benny's vocals together, but I really just want, how do I get rid of this? Oh, like that. So I almost got too much in the end.
They ended up sending you 2 separate vocal tracks.
Yeah, they sent
cool.
so much here, which is really cool. But
and
yeah, okay.
You've layered them in various ways, which is, it looks like.
Yeah. So okay, so I'll just go back to the track here, and I'll just play it with. So this is what came second. Was I was trying to come up with these interesting perks and percussive elements, and I just put a simple 909 kit here.
Nice.
It's gonna sound really intense right now, but I'm going to turn off all of this.
You look like you're a big fan of drum bus as well. I've seen it on several channels already.
Yeah, I love drum bus.
Yeah.
So I've pretty much added vocoder and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
like all this crazy stuff. And then I've added this, okay, hear me out here, guys. It's not going to sound great, but pretty much I just had to play around with this grain delay until I found something I really like. And then I resampled it, and it sounds like this. And that looks like the that's like, for me, that's like the real driving thing in the track with those drums. And I've attached like, oh, I don't actually have it on that channel, but it's got a very similar to a similar swing to the bass line there.
Slip away. I fall into your arms
They're like
again.
kind of clubby.
We're wrapped in your warm embrace. Stay this way for me. Kind of funny how you thought.
And then this is, when the fun part comes in,
I'm curious about those hi-hats. So the process there was you wrote MIDI for the hi-hat part, and then you processed it with grain delay to add a little bit of kind of texture and something to additional, like almost like a sort of a call and response thing with the hi-hats. And then you've resampled that, and then you added a groove to that as well to give it the swing, or was that sort of part of the original kind of processing?
well, I swear I did, but now it's not. Now it's not here, which is weird. But maybe it's because I consolidated it all or something.
It's just nice to sort of start with something quite simple and then just the various stages of it to sort of get something interesting with something so mundane as a hi-hat.
Yeah, and just like so much fun. Like you can do so many fun things with grain delay, and like for me to come up with a, I mean, I probably could have a lot easier just like playing around with like yeah, and I kind of just mixed it up. I really like that part. Yeah. And then I moved on to the main lead, which sounds like this. Oh, that's
You know why I don't wanna be with you. And now you're asking if I'll take you back.
so yeah, pretty simple stuff there with that
That's just
one.
using analog.
Yeah, see, I'm a big advocate for Ableton stock Ableton plugins. Like I love them. I just started using them because I like make a lot of music from like the couch or bed or like the train, like random places. And I just hate having CPU issues. And I find like Ableton is so easy to use. Like it's so simple. And I always just put it on as like a placeholder. And then I'm like, oh, I swap out the sound. But then I end up making the sound the exact sound I want to use anyway. So I use a lot of analog. I use a lot of wavetable. Yeah, I think the sounds are so solid.
Your processing so far, I've all just seen native devices to live as well.
It's pretty cool, hey? Like it's
I mean, I think it's so good to. What am I trying to say here? I think it gets overlooked. You know, the power that we all have at our fingertips already. Constantly searching out there for third-party stuff. It's like there is so much powerful stuff like straight in the box, and it's just awesome to see with a track like this, which is already done so well, and you know, it's just using straight out of the box stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, and like it's
encouraging.
Yeah, they're all the same. Like it's just like a triangle wave, and like I use square waves, triangle waves, like it's all the same. Like,
Triangles, circles, you know.
yeah, like it's all the same. And I guess the most interesting part of this lead though is just like using automation. So just basic stuff like
It's just constantly changing, isn't it?
yeah, yes, it's constantly changing.
Mm.
This, lead here. Just you can see the filter opening up here. When we move down into the end of the song, the drop. It sounds really like pretty and metallic, and I really like wanted that sound.
Yeah.
So I kind of, what did I do here? Oh yeah, just opening up the decay as well of the filter and processing. Oh my gosh, I don't even have the processing on. It's gonna sound way fatter now. Here we go. So yeah, classic drum bass. Love that. It just glues everything together for me.
I love it. Yeah, they've got so much flexibility. It's nice to see drum bus being used not on a drum bus, just
Oh my gosh, yeah. True.
yeah.
I barely use it on drums. Okay.
Barely use it on drums.
I think there's like another little layer. And then I've also, oh, here we go. We've got wavetable for this one. Really simple sound here. No drum bass. But yeah, it's adding something else, so it's a little bit like lighter.
Mm.
I guess like an interesting part here would be what I've done with. I pretty much got the pad, did a bunch of stuff to it, automatic stuff, and just like froze the tracks and then flattened them. And then I went in and changed the transients and pulled them back. So it's got that kind of like choppy. That's what it would be like.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic trick for, yeah, like audio loops to create something a bit more unique and snappy, which I am sure is beneficial to your sound.
Yeah, I love doing it. And like, yeah, same thing as I just attached that same groove. So it's all kind of just gelling together. Like that's gelling the drum.
We've got someone in the chat who said drum bus is just a compressor in the end.
True.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there's a compression element to it, yeah, but I think that it's a very versatile device that does a lot more than just compression. There's a kind of internal compressor, but then we also have the ability to saturate, distort, and yeah, there's filters on it too for high end and low end, and then there's also the sonic boom which we can add too. So yeah, it's versatile.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome, and it looks cool as well. It's like all the Ableton like stock plugins, they just look great and they're just easy to use. So of course I'm going to use them. So yeah, so I pretty much just laid all these sounds up and just put them all together. So that's kind of sitting underneath everything, and it kind of sounds like a vocal, but I think I made it from.
And we've got a bunch of spatial effects going on that sound too, which is giving it that sort of glazed metallic-y sound almost.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what's happening there. Oh, I feel like this is going to be quite interesting to people. So I keep moving that little zoom bar. Can you see that? Did I keep moving it? No.
I don't think so, no.
Awesome. Lucky for you guys. I keep like moving it out of the way.
Okay,
so,
no, I can't see it. I know what you mean though. Yeah, that little pop-up window.
Yeah, I'm like, just go away. So I use like Benny's like a little breath here.
Oh, that's subtle but nice.
And yeah, most people would like edit out the breaths and things like that. But I'm like, you know, I'm going to take this and like use it as like,
Put drum bass on it.
yeah, put drum bass on it. Just like use it as a part of like the groove for the track. So like,
yeah.
play everything. So yeah, that's going throughout, and I really like that. I think it kind of added to like the clubby kind of moody feel of the song.
Yeah, it's a bit spooky almost.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, the point of this was like, I wanted it
anxious.
yeah, I wanted it to almost be like she's like, and then the music stops. But that was kind of fun to do because I usually wouldn't do stuff like that. And then just using the vocal and then turn it into like a riser, which is like pretty simple to do. Pretty much just yeah, so pretty much just getting the vocal and adding a bunch of reverb to it and resampling it. So I wonder if I could just quickly do this here so people can see. So for example, if I just add, I can, this is just a small example. So like this. Ooh, that's a nice tail. And then you go turn off. And then you go onto your audio here. And you've got like this really cool tail, and then you can reverse that. You can do pretty much anything you like, speed it up, slow it down.
Yep. So
just reverse it.
People may not be able to see that audio, but the gain's just quite low on it, but we can also adjust that too. Yeah, that's it. You can sort of see.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. And then the little track, I would just do like add groove, make it high. I'm pretty sure I did that to another part.
It's nice taking these, you're using the existing audio that you've been given, but then just glitching it out, warping it, resampling it, reversing it, repitching it, just to create interesting textures, which just, takes something from, it takes away from just the drag and drop, loop it out kind of thing. This is stuff, this is all gold. This is great.
Yeah, I think particularly like just with getting like a bunch of vocals, that just sounds so amazing. I just really wanted just to use them for everything. I'm trying to find. I'll come back to it. But
on the sort of like the scope of work kind of thing, you know, I mean, this obviously you sort of talked about how this remix sort of came about, and the label gave you only a week. I'm not sure the reasons for that, but was that time frame enough for you to work comfortably, or was that sort of a stressful period?
Yeah, it was a stressful period, but as soon, like, since I was so attached to their project and the song anyway, it's the first thing I wanted to do. Like, I cancelled everything. I was like, guys, I'm doing a remix for Benny, and I love her, and Gus as well. But
life on pause.
I was like, guys, I'm doing a remix. But yeah, and I was just so inspired, and I just wanted it to be good. Like, I made 50% of it like at my desk and 50% of it in bed, and then on the fly, like going places. Like, but so Yeah.
It sounds like you work very much in the box, besides, say, an instrument like Push to accompany you, but you're very much a laptop kind of producer. Would you say that?
Yeah, I'm a laptop girly for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to move away from that a little bit, but it's just, yeah, you just become so used to just being in the box, and you just have your little tricks and stuff. But yeah, I've been doing a few like studio sessions with a friend, and we just both like jump on a synth and just jam out and do all this weird crazy stuff, and it's inspiring.
I think this is great. I mean, this is it's really encouraging, and I think kind of given the more how would we say, like, hybrid model that a lot of people are sort of moving to, working from home aspects of things too, which is sort of a bit of a common thread these days.
Yeah.
This idea of being able to be anywhere but take your studio with you is really powerful. I've always felt quite constrained that I need all my toys around me, and there's no way I can make music without them, kind of thing. But I've been more and more thinking about the shift and the aspect of maybe, traveling a bit more, or, gigs when come up, and you're not always going to have the comfort of a of a nice studio. But just to know that this is not just that it's possible, that it's like, that you can thrive in that environment as well.
Oh, 100%. Like, there's just so much you can do in Ableton. Like, yesterday I took a video of a bird that like wakes me up in the morning, and then exported the audio to Ableton, added it to a song, like pitched it, like warped it, did all this crazy stuff, and now it sounds like someone's like singing. But there's so much you can do with a piece of video. And on that topic, I'm going to show you what I did here.
Please.
So yeah, so we've got like the start of the track. It kind of just follows. Oh my God, I'm pointing at my screen, but you guys can't see me pointing. I will with my mouse. Verse 1, pre-chorus, verse 2, breakdown. And then the drop is when I kind of mix things up a little bit. And I kind of just added my own little call and response thing that I've taken from Benny's vocal. So if we just listen here. For this last part, I just went in and pretty much just dragged this out. So that was on purpose, that it kind of sounds a bit like slow, and I wanted it to be like slow and glitched out and weird. So that's kind of why I did that in time, and then it's like, yeah, it's like, yeah. So that was on purpose. But yeah, you can just grab stuff and doing that stuff.
Nice to take those risks almost, right? Because you're taking a beautiful vocal and then kind of destroying it. It's
pretty much.
Really awesome, the result.
Pretty much. It was like, the start of the song, it was like, I'm gonna let you guys do your thing, and then at the end I'm just gonna completely like mess with it and then go back to it again. So it's like going full circle. So after that, go back into the nice vocals again.
It's like building that tension and then release almost.
Yeah, and I really wanted, those vocals don't really match the energy of the lead here. Like, I want something to match that energy, and I just kind of had to make it myself here. So with this is with all the effects off. Same sort of thing. Like, it sounds really terrible on its own. I've just like found like a tail of like the vocal piece there, and put this like auto-tune plugin on, and I'm like automating the performance. So it's every time. So
Yes.
sounds so
You-
bad, but so good. So it's
Great.
kind of in the background, just like anyway.
I'm curious
Yeah,
about the, wow, it's an incredible feedback tale.
I
I'm
know.
curious about potentially your creative process a little bit, to sort of rewind for, especially for the beginner music makers there, about like, I've been thinking about a producer friend of mine has a bunch of like generative tools to help him come up with something interesting, all sorts of like sequences and melodic sequences and things which I've never even dived into before, but I can see that they'd be quite helpful for people who struggle to come up with those ideas. Do you have any sort of maybe practices, or what's potentially your process when initially trying to find an idea that you're kind of happy with, like that initial like, oh hey, I've got something here? Like what's that kind of moment for you, or that process?
I would say like the biggest hack for music producers, if they don't know music theory and stuff. So this is me very early on. I didn't really know music theory. Is the scale plugin. Like it is just incredible. Like, and you can just make music on the fly. Like this is literally what I'll do. I'll it doesn't sound great, but and then you can go to whatever key you want, and then add a, just like I'm just playing on my keyboard. Like you don't need a synth.
So that you're filtering all the notes that come into a specific scale, and then there's obviously all the various scales to choose from. There's dozens of them.
Yeah. So honestly, guys, use that if you're not comfortable with music theory and stuff. That's why I love the push. The push has that pretty much built in, but you're a lot more hands-on, and you can move, you can automate things and assign things to different knobs and things like that. So that would be my like biggest hack, I guess, and
And
it really
so
helps.
you like play along with the vocal? Will you just listen to that and then find a scale or a key that you're kind of happy with, and then play,
Yeah,
just see what comes out? Like,
yeah, pretty much, and just have the vocal there and just play along.
yeah, it's
I
like a
don't always use
fine
that now,
line.
but
Oh, no, go on. Yeah.
like I don't always use this now, like sometimes. But yeah, early days, that was on everything. It's so cool though. You can always be in key. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I've also found that using a combination of the scale device. There's also the scale mode in MIDI clips in Live 11. Not sure if you're on Live 11.
Yeah,
and
I'm finally on it now. Like
they look very similar with your skin. It's hard to tell the skin color of it. It's a bit tricky, but what am I trying to say here? Yeah, or on the push, and just exploring different scales and sort of seeing what you can get away with. This is what I was sort of talking about before, about sort of bending those melodic rules in a way. Kind of experiment with different scales, just to see if you can sort of squeeze every ounce of melody out of a track, if that's a way to put it.
It's amazing in Ableton, like what you can do, and just like pitching stuff around. I mean, I haven't really done that in this track. Like I didn't want to mess with the vocal, 'cause it's so nice. But yeah, that will be another thing I'd do, is just like pitch something down like 2-3 semitones.
Yes.
But Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else interesting in this track.
Yeah, look, we've probably got, say, another 10 minutes left before we'll dive into some Q&A.
Yeah.
I encourage people to, if you haven't already, drop some questions in the chat. I also forgot to mention as well, I would be, well, we would both be very interested to hear from the people watching about your own experiences and potentially some of the struggles that you've come across, or some of the hurdles, perhaps how you've overcome them, or just something interesting about your own particular journey, which maybe we can explore, rather than not necessarily just sort of technical questions. This is a total open discussion, but we're going to give space for that, say, 7:30 or so, for a bit of a half-hour Q&A chat. So now's your chance. Get those questions in.
Sick. Yeah, I was just having a quick little read through. Did we want to quickly like go through another one, or should I go?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, let's hear some more music. I'm always down for that. We've got 10 minutes, so
Yeah, and this next one's like really simple as well. So lol frogs. Okay, I'm not gonna say that.
I'm curious if the process was different for this one, given that you potentially had a bit more time to work on this one.
I know I had so much time on this one, and it's actually the most simple track, but also like yes and no, I
Yeah.
guess. I did like heaps of different versions for this, but ended up landing with this. But we'll quickly run through it.
Oh yeah, this is cool. I'm digging this. Like it's like simplified, right? It's very easy to sort of see what's going on.
Yeah. All right, so I'll play it from.
This is your final remix.
Bottom line. That's enough of that one.
That's a great groove. That's really cool. Your music is so dynamic, which I love. I'm a bit like, I just love I love analyzing waveforms. It's just a weird kind of sick satisfaction that I have from looking at waveforms. But just seeing and looking at your waveform can sort of see the breaks, the breakdowns, the build-ups, the main sections super clearly. You know, it's not always so clear in music. It can just be like one big waveform the whole way. But I make music in a very similar way, just like lots of dynamics, down points, up points, like so important. Like,
Yeah, it's fun. Like I went in with the intention with the song to have quite a drawn out breakdown, and then at the start of the song you don't really know where it's going to go, and then I want to feel kind of like happy, nostalgic at the end. But yeah, like honestly, like really simple. Like the process with this was just I put the kick down, added the vocal in, and then I had my push, and I was literally like, I'll show you here.
It's like an ARP that you've got. Do-do-ba-do-ba-do-ba-do.
Yeah, I literally was like,
Really?
that's all I was doing. This was all pretty much like live. And then so it was just like vibing out. I don't know. And yeah, as you can see, wavetable here, and I got a little scale plug in there. And then I guess this is a little bit more interesting. This one, I really love how it sounds a bit chaotic. Just like yeah, using a lot of like random things in here.
Yep.
Just messing around, honestly. Just doing...
It looks like you start from scratch a lot of the time. It doesn't look like you're using presets much at all. You must have quite a good understanding of synthesis and sound design and how that all works.
I think so. I think I could probably like have a better understanding of it. But I just find that like Wave was just super easy to use.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can see it here, like there's no like pop-up plugin or anything.
I 100% agree. Yeah, like Wavetable when it came, I was like, wow, I can stop teaching with analog and operator and all these other synths because I've got Wavetable is so clear and so intuitive.
It's so cool. Like I just love it so much, and you can just get a really interesting sound like straight away. So yeah, I use it quite a bit. I use a lot of that Arturia stuff as well.
Like
but yeah,
the V collection, something like that.
Yeah, everything there. But yeah, those would probably be the main parts here. And then just free space. That's just classic me. And then pretty much the break is doing a lot of the work here. I've got my drum bus. Who wants to see my drum bus? Who's ready? Okay. It's technically a compressor. Okay.
There's a compression
I didn't really know what a compressor is. So.
The break is actually adding a lot of vibe. It'll be curious. Can we hear the track with and without the break? Like just like.
Oh yeah, big difference. I went into it wanting to add a break too because I love break beats. I don't think you can get like that sound anywhere else. But I wanted it to be like.
But you've layered it over a 4 to the floor kick.
Oh, so sorry. I just really cut you off there.
No, that's good. No, that's cool. I'll go for
it. Yeah, I've just added a few things on top of it. These were all the stems that they sent me, like the drum stems. But yeah, without the break, it sounds like this. Yeah, and we got something interesting. Some interesting automation happening with this drum bus here. At the start, I've pulled back the transients a bit here. Let's start with one. Sorry, there's a. And then by the end of the song, I've just really pushed them. But the sound's a bit like.
So this is like I'm not sure the official term actually, like the transient shaper or transient designer as part of drum bus. Oh, this We're back on John Voss again. It's fantastic because we can either choose to like tighten up those transients and really like, what's the right word? Accent
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah.
Or we can
It's
like
so
open it, or we can open it right up, which is, and you've automated that, which is, I've never seen that before. That's super cool.
Yeah, and just like look at that.
Super tight, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you could go on and do like the transient trick, but then it's also nice to.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I
really
never
basic.
thought about doing
Really
that.
basic trick. Don't really think there's anything else to add on that one. But yeah, there we have it.
This has been fantastic, super eye-opening. I saw just briefly in the chat that someone was saying they're quite new to remixing, and I think they even said they weren't actually that interested in remixing, but they've learnt a lot anyway just from watching and hearing what we've been talking about. So that's quite cool to hear. It's like there's the crossover, right, between just making music and just making a remix. Is they're one and the same thing, but obviously have their differences as well. So I think that people are getting a lot out of this. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Like I love it.
Well, look, hey, thanks so much for diving into your projects there. I know that it's not something that all producers want to do. Some people want to keep all the tricks and for the trade hidden from the public, but you're freely open and so just so open about this, which is really cool. So appreciate that.
It's okay. I mean, there's so many different ways to do stuff. Like, so yeah. We're sharing all of our knowledge, and there's just so much like cool things you can do in Ableton. It's like really exciting, and I'm learning like new stuff every day still. And yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Well, look, we'll use this as an opportunity to dive into the Q&A. I know Tom and Ramsey and the APRA team have been furiously answering the questions along the way, but I believe that we'll probably have...
We've got some more, actually.
A bit of a backlog, yeah.
So Ed and Willo, thank you. So fantastic. And so along in the background, Tom, they have been typing so many answers to so many questions. Lots has been coming through, which is really great. So they've done lots of the legwork, but there's a little bit of there was some questions that we left over that we thought would be good just to ask you guys about. Just give me 1 second. So I might read them out to you guys. Let's see how we go. So we've got a couple here for you, Willo. We've got Paul was talking about the Benny remix. And he's saying you have track delay open but not using it to move transients. Sort of think what he's asking about is what you'd usually use them for in a project.
Track delay as in like on the side, on the far right hand side, yeah?
I don't know. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. They're just like that. Sometimes I would use it. I would pull back like the clap like for milliseconds or whatever, just to add a little bit of swing and groove.
Yeah, it adjusts the timing of how things sit on the timeline in milliseconds, like you said. Yeah, which can be a nice way to either pull things just a little bit before the beat or just after the beat. But yeah, it's like micro dissecting the timing of where things sit, which can be quite helpful. Also for dealing with live instruments potentially as well, where you might have a little bit of delay and you want to compensate for that after the fact and not move the waveforms along. So yeah, it's getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, sometimes I'll use it and then sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll just go into the clip and just move, like literally just move the MIDI back or move the audio back a little bit. Or sometimes I'll use it like, yeah, it just kind of depends on the day. But yeah, hopefully we answered your question there.
Thank you. Okay, there's another question here. How do you find the key and scale of a song you're remixing? or do they generally tell you?
They don't really tell you. Sometimes it's in the stems, which is really great. It's great when they've got the BPM and the key and it's all labeled nicely, but yeah, a lot of the times it's not. Like with this Benny song, yeah, I think I mentioned that I didn't get the stems until Monday or Tuesday, but I wanted to start it straight away because I had a week. So I just Googled what's the key, what's the key of the song. There's heaps of different ways you can do it. But I did that, and then I've got like this plugin called Hornet something. I guess I could find it. But yeah, you just put it on I think it was like $4 or something crazy, and you just put it on a track and it will just tell you the notes, because sometimes Ableton, like the tuner, can be good but sometimes doesn't pick up all the notes. So I just put that on there and it just told me the key, and yeah, so most of the time I'll Google it or I'll just use this plugin. Again, depends.
What was that plugin called? Hornet, did you say?
Yeah, let me see what it's called again. Hornet Song Key MK4.
The techniques that I've used for that is actually one of my most favorite technique is just trying to sing the notes, which sounds super simple, but I've found that that's kind of a nice way to do it. It's hard, but just trying to sing along with the main melody, or just find one note in the melody and then try to match my voice, just rolling up the piano chromatically and just try and find that note. I can't sing very well, if at all, but it's something that's nice to get into the practice of doing. But yeah
100%. And just adding a Ableton tuner to like your track scene. And also like right clicking, what's it called, Ed? Sorry, I'm
like
you can't read my mind.
Convert like audio to MIDI track.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. That's
harmony,
a good
convert melody, and you can also convert drums, or rhythm.
Yes.
To new.
Go Ableton. I'm such an ambassador here at this point.
You are.
I just love
what you're here for.
I know. I honestly just live on it. So it's like my favorite thing. Like when I met up with Tom from Ableton, like it was just so nice just to chat about Ableton for an hour. Like my favorite thing to do. Anyway,
like right now.
He understands.
yeah.
All right, Ed, we've got a question for you. Julie has asked, do MIDI tracks create more lag than live performance instrument recording?
Do MIDI tracks create more lag than live instrument recording? I'm not sure I fully understand that, but maybe in live performance aspect or live recording, I guess I'll say MIDI would chew up a little bit more CPU than audio, if I could answer it that way. And when I approach like live performances, if I'm performing with Ableton Live, I try to have as little MIDI in my projects as possible and just play back audio, so a little bit less strain on the computer. I'm not sure if I fully answered that question, but I hope that's helpful.
Well, I'm sure they can pop it in the Q&A if we haven't gotten to the bottom of it. Another question for you, Willow. Paul had asked, what does Willow have on her return tracks?
Just reverb, like different types of reverb, like a small reverb, large reverb, also a compressor that's sidechained to the kick, so your reverb moves with the kick, and just an EQ on the reverb as well. So reverb, compressor, and then EQ, and then I think I've got a delay as well on there. But yeah,
cool.
Really simple.
Thank you. Okay, so some questions maybe for the two of you. Is there anything you need to watch out for when warping in a track or remix that has a BPM change?
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. The tracks that have a BPM change, I haven't come across them myself personally. Potentially would be treating those stems, if you're dealing with stems to begin with, individually. So slicing them so that you could warp it to 1 BPM, and then you could automate a BPM change within live and then warp the other section. It would be quite challenging, and especially if it was just one file. Certainly possible, take a bit of time, fine tuning. Warping, I like to think, is a bit of an art form and comes from experience of just warping all kinds of different audio. So you could start with very straight dance tracks with a 4 to the floor kick and pretty straightforward warping in that instance, but then maybe try something with doesn't have a 4 to the floor kick, something that's not made to a metronome, some older pieces of music that was just recorded to, say, a click track, or even something that wasn't, and you can kind of get better at warping with time. But yeah, with a BPM change, that's a challenge. Work up to it, and probably treat them individually and then try and glue them together.
Yeah, fantastic answer. It just takes practice as well. Like warping, like I found that was extremely hard. Especially with like Ableton 11, like the new algorithm update and stuff. It's so much easier now. Just practice, and individually, like chopping it up is a good idea as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, another question, Gemma. This is for the two of you. Have you found that the drums not included stem packs tend to be more of a newer thing? I remember some remix comps from the 2010s where stems definitely did include drums, either as stems or specific hit samples.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I brought up the topic of the no drums in stem packs. That's only on personal experience, and that's from about, I think, 6 or 7 official remixes, and they just haven't been included, which I find fascinating. So potentially could be a new thing, but Willo, you might have more experience on this.
Honestly, it's just different. I only started remixing officially in like the last 2 years, and it depends on the mix engineer pretty much what they want to do. But yeah, no harm in asking, I think, if you need more stems.
Yeah, I get the feeling like drums are quite personal to producers, or they're somewhat protective potentially of their grooves, which I believe is like the foundation of everyone's tracks. Like synths are interchangeable, but drum sounds and grooves is somewhat maybe unique to a producer's sound in a way. That's the only thought that I can think of, in that you want to maintain a level of your own sound in some way, and drums may be part of that. I don't know.
That's a really good point, actually. Maybe people are trying to like gatekeep their drums and stuff, which is like fair enough, go for it. That's like why I don't tell people about drum buffs, you know. Oh wait, I do.
I think that's totally okay, like to have a little bit of, the secret sauce to your own work. That's somewhat sacred to some people, and that's okay.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, guys, I think one more question. Charlie has asked, if you're new to the remixing game and not getting official stems from labels, where do you suggest sourcing them? I know Beatport has some, but any other sites?
Do you okay, do we want like okay, what you can do I'm like, how do I answer this question? Like, do I just be honest? You can get stems from this AI website called fader.com. Maybe I put it in the, I'm not going to gatekeep this stuff. Like, it is really helpful. Fader.com. Oh my God, why does it keep? Anyway, you can pretty much punch in any song and get the stems for everything. So it's pretty cool.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's how I started the Benny remix. Early. I just yeah. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's remix competitions. I think it was just mentioned in the last one where stems are made available from producers, and I know Triple J has done remix competitions and other platforms, I'm sure as well. Just artists will generally around a release sometimes have a remix comp, internally and make the stems available. That was the very first kind of remix that I had, which I only did it because the artist who made the stems available made it a guarantee that you'd get your song on Spotify. So I was like, right, cool, I'm in for that. Since then, and it's been taken down because they had some problem with the label in the end. But lessons learned. But yeah, so artists do this from time to time and release stems. Beatport's also a fantastic tool. They have a lot of DJ tools there where you can download acapellas. Labels will release the official acapellas for you to remix them. And my first actual release, which was just under my main name, Ed Rollo, was a remix that I downloaded a DJ tool acapella and ended up sending it to the label, and they really loved it and released it. And they released it on a compilation with a bunch of remixes because a lot of people had found this old classic acapella and gone that route. So yeah, there's many different roads to that place.
Yeah, and just asking the artist as well, because if you're into it and you're passionate, like, they might be keen to share with you.
Great. I think a couple more things being popped into the Q&A. I don't know if you can see those there.
Oh.
So there's probably more of a statement, or maybe it's a bit of a question. Isn't the most common reason to do remix to change the beat, for example, make it more clubby? So is that why they leave the drums out?
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, drums potentially. Yeah, I mean, this is a debate now, but yeah, drums are just a foundational aspect. I mean, I think that there's some signature sounds of drums which I think could be used in any different way. Like a drum hit, doesn't matter how you position that in a track. Could be slow, could be fast, could be a drum and bass, or it could be a house track. I don't know. We'll get to the bottom of it, though.
We could be here all night. Paul's asked a question, and I don't know what this means. It says OTT, good or no? Then he says, lol. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think it's a bit of a joke question, but yeah, OTT, or over the top, is a preset for multi-band compressor in Ableton Live, which I think is pretty hot with the producers wanting to make. I don't know, what does it do? It enhances your sound. I don't know. Do you use it? I don't actually use it personally. So
I use it, but I use maybe like 10% of it. It just adds like a nice little like compressed high into something. So I'll put it on vocals that don't sound too great. It just adds like a nice little multi-band compression is great for that. I don't use the OTT preset just because it's so extreme, but there's the multi-band dynamics, sorry, is the actual device, but it's multi-band compression preset, which I love because it's kind of like an OTT at about 10%, like you said. Yeah, true. That's like the name. Like OTT, that sounds good. Whack it on.
Awesome. Guys, we have officially reached the end of our questions. So I think your job here is done. Massive thank you to both of you, Willo, for taking many, many questions, Ed being a fantastic facilitator, and thanks for all of your expertise. You guys have been so generous with your time and your experiences, and I know that it's really appreciated by everybody sitting around the place, sitting at home, just learning from what you know, and that's such a gift to give. So thank you so much for sharing that with everybody. And thanks everyone for sticking around and tuning in. Really lovely to have you. Actually, one thing I really should say is to give a plug to the fact that there is a member discount for Ableton, and it's software. It's the software. So there's a 15% discount on Ableton software through if you are an APRA member. So if you go to, I'll try and chuck something in here actually. I'll quickly, maybe Glenn, if you're in the background, you could pop it in there, but there's a link to our website. It'll give you the information. So if you want to search for it, type in APRA AMCOS Ableton and you'll see the info in there. So please do check that out as well. Ramsey, Tom from Ableton, fantastic job in the background answering a million questions during this session. Thank you so much. And Glenn for being in the background and helping out with any APRA stuff. Willow, Ed, awesome work. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. Been a lot
Really
of fun.
appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Oh, thanks so much. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Happy remixing.
Bye.